Arthur, I'm calling as a friend. Get that boy out of your estate before someone calls security. We don't need the whole slum dragged up to our doorstep, especially around a fragile little girl like Lily. Arthur answered the phone in the middle of the birthday garden. Victoria Blackwood's voice was steel cold, sharp enough to leave no room for breath. He gripped the phone tighter, hand trembling slightly. He didn't reply, only listened, each word driving into his chest like a nail. In Greenwich's high society, Victoria was a throne without a crown. One word from her could shut or open any door. He raised his eyes. The garden was dazzling. Pure white tablecloths, neatly lined yellow chairs, balloons tied in clusters, and a 5-tiered cake standing tall on the table. Yet all of it only highlighted the cruel truth. 24 chairs, not a single one occupied. Lily's 7th birthday party. Hollow, suffocating. Arthur glanced at his watch, past noon already. The small silver-wrapped gift bags still sat in neat rows, untouched. Popsicles in the cooler were starting to drip. He held a glass of wine, swirling it until it spilled cold between his fingers. He didn't bother to wipe it away. "Think about it," the voice in his head mocked. "Your daughter's birthday, the chair's empty, the balloons plenty, but no one's singing. If you were Arthur standing here, would you bear it?" He turned toward his daughter. Lily sat quietly. In her titanium wheelchair, a tiny body swallowed up by the gleaming metal frame. Her small fingers twisted a pink ribbon over and over until it wrinkled. Now and then, she glanced at the garden gate, waiting for someone to run in, then dropped her eyes again. Those blue eyes that once sparkled with anticipation now carried only silence. Arthur swallowed hard. His mind shot back 2 years. The midnight phone call, the accident, his wife gone, Lily surviving but her legs lost forever. He remembered her gaze in the hospital, full of fear yet without tears, searching only for her father. Back then, he had promised to protect her at all costs. But now, seeing her so alone, that promise felt hollow. He walked slowly toward Lily, hand lifting, then freezing midair above her shoulder. What could he say? "It's okay. Everything will pass." They sounded false. His throat closed. The screech of a hinge startled him. The garden gate swung open. A boy walked in. Curly hair, dark skin, a faded Captain America t-shirt, sneakers worn at the heel, dirt on his legs, scrapes on his knees. He carried no gift, wore nothing polished like the children Arthur usually knew. But his face lit up with a wide grin, a missing front tooth on display. "I saw the balloons," the boy said without fear. "I thought maybe the birthday girl was sad." Arthur froze. In his mind, Victoria's blade-like voice cut again. "Get him out." Yet before he could react, Lily looked up. Her blue eyes widened, and her fingers released the ribbon. On her small face flickered curiosity. A faint spark, but undeniable. The boy stepped closer. "Happy birthday. I don't have a present, but I can sing Happy Birthday really loud. If you want, I can blow balloons too." Lily pressed. Her lips together, glancing at her father as if waiting for him to dismiss it. But Arthur stayed silent. She took a breath, then suddenly burst into laughter. Clear, short, but ringing through the silent yard. Arthur stood frozen. For 2 years, he hadn't heard that sound again. The bright, innocent laugh he thought had vanished after the accident returned, brought back by a stranger boy with a missing tooth. Lily covered her mouth, cheeks flushed. Her eyes shone. The boy raised his hand like a pretend microphone. 1, 2, 3. "Happy birthday to you." His voice off-key, clumsy, but Lily laughed so hard her wheelchair shook with her body. Arthur felt his chest unlock. No doctor, no therapist, no lavish party had done this. Yet this dusty, gap-toothed boy had. He stepped forward and crouched to the boy's eye level. His voice low, softened. "Welcome, kid. Lily really needs a true friend. Balloons rustled in the breeze, the chairs still empty, but the air was no longer heavy with failure. For the first time in months, Arthur felt like a father again. What he didn't know was that this simple choice would spark a storm that would soon sweep both him and Lily out of Greenwich's gilded embrace. The trouble began at the start of the week. Not with a noisy scandal, but with a phone call that sounded polite, yet cut sharper than a razor. Arthur had just sat down for breakfast when the phone rang. The headmistress's voice flowed through, deliberate, each word carefully chosen. "Mr. Sterling, we've received some concerns from parents about friendships that may not be entirely appropriate for the school environment. You understand, of course, our duty is to protect the children." Arthur tightened his grip on the coffee cup handle. The steam rose, but he didn't bother to sip. His voice came out rough as he cut in. "You mean Lily's friend, the boy?" On the other end, there was a brief pause before the headmistress's tone smoothed again. "Perhaps it would be better if limited." Arthur slammed the cup down onto the saucer, liquid spilling over the rim. He didn't wipe it away. That afternoon, Lily came home. She didn't wait for her father to open the door. She wheeled herself in, eyes red. "They said I can't sit at the lunch table anymore," she whispered, broken. "They said my friend is filthy." Arthur froze, sinking down to eye level with her. "Who said that?" Lily shook her head, lips pressed tight, fingers twisting. "A ribbon until it wrinkled." The answer was obvious without a name. Arthur reached for her shoulder, but she flinched back, face full of shame. A 7-year-old is already bearing the contempt of words handed down by adults. Arthur rose, walked straight into his office, and shut the door. In his mind, Victoria's steel voice returned. Get him out. 2 days later, the second blow fell, this time at his company. For 6 months, he and his team had prepared for a merger. Due diligence complete, contracts ready. Arthur had been so confident that he kept the press release draft in his desk. But during the final board vote, a senior member, who once called Arthur friend over dinner, suddenly voted against. The man didn't meet Arthur's eyes, only bowed his head, hands trembling. That single red card was enough to pull others with it. The result? The deal collapsed. The boardroom sank into polite silence. No congratulations, no condolences. Arthur removed his glasses, laid them on the polished wood, staring at the grain. He knew this wasn't an accident. It was a strike, premeditated. The wires had been pulled long before. Once again, the name Victoria Blackwood surfaced in his mind. The third blow struck at his pride, his sense of belonging to a tribe. Thursday afternoon, Arthur received an email from the elite golf club. His membership renewal had been misplaced. The cold notice, words flat and empty, told him clearly that door had closed. He still drove there, partly from habit, partly to face what he already knew. The walnut bar gleamed, ice clinked in glasses. Yet those who once reached out eagerly now only nodded briefly before turning away. Someone called his name, Arthur, but kept his hand clamped to his glass. Never extending it, Arthur stood still for a few seconds, enough to feel the frozen distance. Then he walked out quietly. At the exit, the valet returned his keys, their eyes meeting briefly. In that glance, a flicker of awkwardness, a hint of pity, gone in a blink. Arthur took the keys, nodded once. Thank you. The 2 words rasped. That night, Lily went to bed early. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, as if hiding from the world. On the kitchen table, the cookie tin Leo had brought days earlier remained nearly full, only one missing. Arthur sat, opened the box, and broke a piece, cheap sweetness, butter sharp on the tongue. He chewed slowly, swallowing his anger along with it. Then he stepped into his office. He didn't switch on the ceiling light, only the desk lamp. In the glass reflection was a man with a loose tie and dark circles under his eyes. Not the powerful CEO from the magazines, but a father cornered. Arthur picked up his phone, scrolling to David Chen. A quiet man with a Mossad past, now head of corporate intelligence for Sterling Capital. Arthur pressed call. David. I'm here. Victoria. Blackwood, the Greenwich Heights project. I want everything. Transactions, emails, shell companies, every call, no budget limit. I want her entire life on my desk by Friday. On the other end, silence. Then a crisp reply. Understood. Arthur hung up. For the first time in a week, he exhaled, not from helplessness, but from something else. Inside his chest, despair had given way to a new force, a cold, targeted fury. They had made one fatal mistake. They had gone after his daughter. Arthur once thought Greenwich was nothing more than the neighborhood he lived in. Neatly trimmed lawns, straight white fences, and the hush of wealthy silence. But a few days later, standing before a red brick housing project at the edge of town, he realized Greenwich had another face, one rarely spoken of. The building was old, its elevator groaning to a stop, hallways steeped in the smell of food from many kitchens. Arthur stepped inside, the click of his expensive leather shoes out of place against the worn floor. He wasn't used to this kind of silence, one broken by crying children and old TV sets humming from behind doors. The door of 4B opened. Leo appeared first, beaming just as brightly as he had at Lily's birthday. Mr. Sterling, I told Grandma. You were coming. Arthur nodded, keeping his voice level. Hello, kid. In the small kitchen, Eleanor Johnson was setting the table. Around 70, her silver hair tied neatly, her eyes sharp and steady. Not fragile, but like someone who had weathered many storms. Arthur greeted her, and she returned the gesture with a calm nod. Mr. Sterling. Before he could speak, Leo chimed in proudly. Grandma, this is Lily's dad, my new friend's father. The boy's pride made Arthur's throat tighten. Tea was served. The kitchen was small, the cups chipped, but it carried something the Sterling estate never had. Warmth. Eleanor listened as Arthur recounted what had happened. At school, at the boardroom, at the club. He spoke slowly, his voice dipping whenever he reached Lily's tears or another betrayal. She didn't interrupt, only nodded lightly. When he finished, she set her cup down and met his eyes. They're not just targeting you because your daughter is friends with my grandson. They're targeting you because you got in their way. Arthur frowned. In their way? Eleanor rose, pulled a folder from the drawer. Property notices, rent hikes, eviction orders, piled like bricks. She dropped them on the table. This neighborhood is the target. The developer behind it? A subsidiary of Blackwood Enterprises, Greenwich Heights. Ring a bell? Arthur flipped through the papers. Dry legal words turned into knives before his eyes. Higher fees, service cuts, deadlines to vacate. Eleanor's voice stayed steady but carried weight. I marched in Selma. I've heard threats before, but this isn't just prejudice. It's greed. They want us gone to build penthouses for the rich. And you refused to bankroll that project. Now you're the obstacle. Arthur leaned back, exhaling. The picture widened far beyond what he had imagined. It wasn't just Lily being bullied. It wasn't just him being isolated. It was a calculated plan to crush an entire community. He looked up at Eleanor. She had no fortune, no corporation. But she had something he lacked. Unyielding grit, straight and clear. Slowly, Arthur nodded. You have the truth. I have the resources. If you're willing, we can bring her down together. Eleanor studied him longer than courtesy required. Then she nodded, her weathered hand gripping his firmly. Then we fight together. While the alliance took shape, David Chen, and his team began prying apart the Blackwood empire brick by brick. They moved in silence, like shadows, leaked emails, odd money transfers, altered audit reports. Piece by piece, the puzzle of corruption fell into place. By Friday afternoon, David sent Arthur a file. Only a few seconds of audio, but enough to topple a throne without a crown. Victoria's voice came through, unmasked and merciless. Make their lives unbearable. Cut the services, raise the penalties. I don't care. I want that plague-ridden block gone. Those people do not belong in Greenwich. Arthur sat frozen, headset pressed tight. Each word dropped heavy as lead. He pulled the headphones off and set them down. In his eyes now was no longer just a CEO under attack. It was a father, an ally, and a warrior who had just found his most powerful weapon. That day's city council meeting was expected to glide by like a familiar ritual. Victoria. Blackwood's Greenwich Heights project only awaited its final stamp of approval. In the front row, she sat upright, dark suit pressed, face composed as though victory was already hers. Local reporters had their headlines ready, praising urban renewal. But the atmosphere shifted the moment the heavy doors at the back swung open. Arthur Sterling walked in. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood Eleanor Johnson, followed by Marcus, Leo's father, and dozens of residents from the housing project. They made no noise, carried no signs. They simply entered quietly, worn coats on their backs, tired faces lit with steady resolve. Their silence was the strongest accusation. Arthur scanned the room, catching frowns, whispers, and lenses swinging toward the newcomers. In the front row, Victoria's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. One of Arthur's lawyers stepped to the podium, voice firm. Before the council proceeds with a vote, we would like to present evidence of unlawful practices and violations of federal fair housing regulations by Blackwood Enterprises. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Victoria shot up. Outrageous! This is no place for theatrics. But the presentation continued. A screen descended. Evidence flashed across it. Internal emails between Victoria and officials plotting to clear out the neighborhood. Financial records showing suspicious transfers to personal accounts. Doctored land assessments inflating value. The weight in the room thickened. Some journalists scribbled furiously. Others trained their cameras squarely on Victoria. Eleanor was invited to the podium. She didn't deliver a rousing speech. She only spoke slowly, each word measured. This is not just numbers on a page. This is our home. It's where a retired teacher raises 3 grandchildren. It's where a firefighter who risked his life in last year's blaze still lives with his wife. And now they are told to leave. Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes never wavered. Arthur watched, gripped by something he couldn't quite name. He had stood in boardrooms worth millions, but never had truth been laid bare so clearly, not in charts, but in human faces. And then came the killing blow. Arthur's lawyer lifted a USB drive and plugged it in. Let us hear Mrs. Blackwood's own voice. The speakers cracked. Then Victoria's sharp words filled the chamber. Make their lives unbearable. Cut. Services. Raise penalties. I want that plague-ridden block gone. Those people do not belong in Greenwich. A heavy silence fell. In that stillness, every layer of her facade collapsed. Victoria's face drained, eyes darting for a lifeline. On the dais, the mayor bowed his head, fists clenched. Her allies turned away, unable to meet her gaze. The back doors opened. 2 FBI agents strode in, heading straight for the front row. The snap of handcuffs echoed, metallic and final. Victoria was led out, her dark skirt brushing the stone floor, all authority gone. Arthur watched, but felt no triumph, only a weight, lifted as though a stone had been removed from his chest. His eyes met Eleanor's. She nodded, not in celebration, but in quiet affirmation that justice could still be found. From the rows behind, the residents began to clap. Not the thunderous applause of spectacle, but slow, uneven beats. Real, spreading across the chamber. A reporter whispered, "This is the real story today." Arthur exhaled, slow and deep. He knew this was not the end. Much remained to be done. But in that moment, inside a hall long accustomed to ritual nods and empty formality, he felt something different. Truth could still be heard, even when someone tried to strangle it. A few weeks after the city council meeting, the small park beside the housing project was livelier than ever. There were no white-clothed tables or towering cakes, only a few folding tables, smoky grills, and laughter mixing with music from an old portable speaker. Arthur stood by the grill, clumsily flipping meat with a spatula like an apprentice. Marcus, Leo's father, laughed, steadying his hand. "Flip it quick or it'll burn. You're used to numbers, not grease splattering." Arthur chuckled awkwardly, his polo shirt stained with oil. A sight no one in finance would have imagined. Shah. The grass Lily and Leo raced in wheelchairs. Leo borrowed a chair from the community, legs tucked up, grinning as he shouted, "Come on, Lily, beat me." Lily's laughter rang out, hair flying wild. Even from a distance, Arthur heard it clearly, echoing straight into his chest. He dropped the spatula, eyes fixed on his daughter. For months he had only seen her sitting silently, twisting a pink ribbon like a wound in his heart. But now, watching her laugh uncontrollably, shaking the chair with joy, Arthur felt warmth he thought he had lost forever. Eleanor sat on a folding chair, watching it all. She didn't say much, only smiled when Leo called out, "Grandma, look, I'm winning." And Lily counted, "No, I am." Eleanor clapped, her eyes glowing like someone who had seen generations rise, but rarely a moment so whole. As the picnic buzzed, Arthur stepped onto a makeshift wooden stage, microphone in hand, patched into the old speaker. He cleared his throat and waited for quiet. His voice carried out, not the tone of a CEO in a boardroom, but of a father, a neighbor. "I've learned much these past weeks," Arthur said, "and one truth stands out. Real wealth isn't measured on paper. It's here, in this community, in the laughter of children." The crowd listened in silence. Arthur went on. "The Johnson family and I will establish the Sterling Johnson Foundation. The assets seized from Blackwood Enterprises will not line deep pockets again. They will build affordable housing, scholarships, and community centers. And the first project will begin right here." He pointed to the empty lot beside the park. "A community library will rise bearing the name Eleanor Johnson." Applause swelled. Eleanor flushed, her eyes glistening. Leo hugged her tight. "Grandma, there's really going to be a library with your name." Lily wheeled over, holding her hand. 3 generations stood together in the setting sun over the park. Arthur stepped down, heading to an old iron swing at the edge of the playground. Lily wanted to try it. He lifted her carefully from the chair, placing her on the seat. His hands pushed gently. The swing creaked. Lily squealed, hair flying free. Leo jumped on the swing beside her, legs dangling, pumping hard to catch up. The scene was simple. 2 kids shouting, a father sweating, golden light pouring over. Yet for Arthur, it was the most beautiful picture. He lifted his gaze to the sky. For the first time in years, his heart felt light. No midnight phone calls. With tragedy, no empty banquet chairs, no turned-away glances. Only laughter, clear, bright, the most precious legacy he could give his daughter and this community. Some laughs seem lost forever. For 2 years, Arthur Sterling heard only silence, echoing through his vast house, until the day a scruffy boy with a missing tooth and a fearless grin walked into an empty birthday party and brought the sound of laughter back. Arthur had been cast out of high society, stripped of handshakes and glittering banquets. But he had gained something far greater, a real community, a laugh money could never buy, and a legacy his daughter could be proud of. That is true wealth. And what about you? Do you believe a small moment, a smile, a hand reaching out, can change an entire life? Share your story or experience in the comments. Perhaps what you write will be the hope someone else needs. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a story that touches the heart. This is Toch Story, where everyday tales become sparks of warmth for us all.